Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fearlessly Authentic. I'm your host, Jody Harrison Bauer, and I am so happy to have you join me for this episode today. This is the show that educates you, empowers you, maybe we entertain you a little bit, and inspires you to live your most fearlessly authentic life. Because in my humble opinion, if we're not trying to do that every single day, then what the heck are we doing here? We are a top 5% globally rated podcast, and it's all because of you. So please remember to rate, review, and subscribe, share with all of your friends, and we really appreciate you listening. Let's get on with the show. I have a lot on my mind today, and it's the reason I wanted to get behind this microphone. I love podcasting, and I always have so much on my mind, and I don't know where to start. And then I think I just want to get behind the microphone and start talking. And then I think, oh, I got to wash my hair. I got to put some makeup on. And no, I really don't, but I do because I want to look somewhat presentable to all of you. And looking at myself in my reflection right now, all I can see is that I don't have my eyelash extensions on. But what I wanted to talk about were a couple of things. But the one that pops out in my mind the most is that I just completed training for a fitness show. So I got on stage after 10 years and did a fitness competition, almost 10 years to the day. So I was almost 55 and I'm almost 65. I'll be 65 on December 27th. And I thought to myself, while I was going through this process and feeling stronger and just loving the whole process of competing, of getting strong, just staying regimented in my diet. And you guys know that I eat clean 99% of the time, but it's taken to the next level. And I think I was surprised at how my body came out. Like, I thought I looked really good before, and then I thought, holy shit, I had no idea that I could still do this, that I still had the mental capacity and tenacity to still do something like this, to be disciplined, to be regimented, to want it, to be so hungry for it. And I did it. And I didn't do it for 10 years. And I thought to myself, God, why did I stop? And I didn't even remember why I stopped. And the only thing I could think of was I stopped because maybe I thought I met a man that I fell in love with. We were together, and this is really all I ever wanted. Was I wanted to find the love of my life, and I wanted to make my life calm and peaceful. And he was very supportive of me doing the competition 10 years ago. And then when the show was over, he's like, are you never going to do this again? And I thought, I don't need to do this again. As long as I have you and as long as I have your love and we have each other's backs, then no. And then I thought, well, was I competing all those years to prove that I was worthy for somebody else? Because for most of the other 10 years that I competed, I was in another relationship, and he was supportive when it was convenient to him and very, very unsupportive and almost punitive when it was taking away attention from him. And that was another thing that I had to deal with. So when I think about all of this, like the last, let's just say, since I've had children, the last 36 years, and I started competing when I was 47. And I didn't compete before then because at 35, after I had both of my daughters, I had my second daughter at 32. So it was 3 years after I had her, and I was in great shape. And I remember saying to my then husband, hey, I would like to compete in fitness shows. And he said to me, not while you're my wife. And I thought, okay, he shut me down. Maybe this isn't all that important. Maybe this isn't the right time. Maybe this isn't for you, Jody, because maybe the universe is telling you not to do this now. Even though I would look through Oxygen magazine and I would see the physiques on these women, and I knew my body, and I knew my body could do this. And it's funny because when I was a buyer for a department store before I stayed at home and had my daughters, I was a buyer. And when I would go into New York for my buying trips, there was a vendor there and she was a bodybuilder. So this was like 1985 to 1989. And she said to me, you should think about competing. And I was like, what? Competing? Like I was always fit, but like, she's like, yeah, you have a very symmetrical body. And I thought that was the first thought that ever went into my head was in the late 80s. And I thought, oh, like I knew my body was strong. My mom put me in dance at 2 years old. I danced until I was 12. And then I did ballroom dancing for about a year, some horseback riding, and then cheerleading from 8th grade to from until I was a senior, until I graduated from high school. And then I went to a women's college and they didn't have cheerleading. So I road crew for 1 year, hated it. And because we had to jog to the Harvard Boathouse, which was about, I don't know, it was probably only 2 miles, but it felt like 10 miles. And I was never a runner. So I hated it and I quit after 1 year. And it was the first year of the crew team. And it wasn't for me. I tried to go back to dancing. I just didn't feel lift. Like I didn't feel I danced mostly ballet and I was on point. It wasn't me. I knew I wasn't tall and long, and like ballerinas need to be tall and long. So that was soon after I realized that dancing wasn't going to be in my future, like classical dancing, like ballet. That's when I discovered weightlifting. And even though, I did some push-ups and pull-ups and things like that in high school, I really got into weightlifting when I was in college, even though it was very limited. There was a room like the size of a closet that had some free weights in there, and I would go in there. There was also a ballet bar, so I would stretch and I would do plies and I would do a lot of the ballet things, and I would incorporate the weights, sort of like what bar is right now. Anyway, so I knew that I had a strong body, and I did know, without anybody saying this to me, that I knew it was symmetrical, and I knew it was meant to be something more than it was. And the funny thing is, I knew that one day I would make money using this strong body, and I didn't know how. And I think I've shared this story with you. I wanted to be a physical therapist. I went to college. I had not researched what it would take to be a physical therapist. It was a 5-year program at my college, and I was terrible at math. I was terrible at science, but I thought I could push through it and learn and get a tutor and all of that other stuff. And unfortunately, I didn't have the kind of parents who said, like, in some ways, they said to me all the time, Jody, you can do anything you want, but we're not going to spend another year of tuition to see if you could become a physical therapist. And by the way, like the program, like I needed to have applied to it because it was you got your master's after 5 years, and it was a very competitive program. And so then I thought about, okay, so I gave up physical therapy as an option. And then I said, well, I'm going to be a nutrition major. So all the things that I do now, again, really bad at science and math, could have gotten a tutor, didn't really get the encouragement from my parents to pursue my dreams. And they were like, just be a communications major and find a husband. And that was never really the thing that I was trying to do. I really wanted to have a career. I wanted to only depend on myself for money. I didn't want to rely on anyone. I had seen and watched. I saw what my parents went through financially. My father was in sales. He did really well, but it was either feast or famine. So from there, there was always some type of science, body, strength between my dance and cheerleading and rowing crew, and then finding the love of lifting weights and wanting to be a nutritionist or a physical therapist, and then becoming a buyer, which had nothing to do with any of these things. Although I loved fashion, I know you can't really tell because I wear the same things all the time, but that's just my doing. I do love fashion. And then, getting into the fitness world. So when this vendor said to me, you have a very symmetrical body, you should do that, that thought never left my brain. I always remembered her saying that to me, obviously, because I'm talking about it right now. And so when I told my husband, then my ex-husband, that I wanted to compete, and he said no, I really felt like a door was slammed in my face. It was something I wanted to pursue. He did not want me to work. He was fine with me volunteering, but he did not want me to work. He did not want me to earn any money. I know what you guys are thinking. He wanted me to be dependent on him. I don't think he really thought it out like that. I think that that's how it ended up being. I did work part-time as a trainer and a group class instructor. That's how I got my start and started taking on private clients, but it was very, very part-time. And so after I had Lexi at 32, I hired a trainer. He was Mr. Connecticut, and he was like, he's probably in his 70s now. You know, he was probably like a steroid user and things like that. But he taught me what a macronutrient was. He taught me everything that I needed to know about nutrition. And then I ended up taking lots and lots of courses about nutrition. I have many, many certifications on it and many certifications in fitness. I couldn't even begin to list all of my certifications because it would take too long. But I had the education of as close to a nutritionist as possible. And I have the background, I have the education and the expertise to show anybody how to lift weights, train, to have the body that they want to live in. And way back then, it was all about, mirror muscles. But the thought of competing never left my brain. So when I got divorced and I was in my 40s and I just wanted to be myself. I didn't know who that person was yet, but I knew that I was on a journey to meet her. And I was really excited to see who I would find inside of me because I was never really me. I never really had to figure anything out or think about anything because my parents made so many of my decisions for me. Yes, I made lots of decisions at college, but even as I was talking about, like even my majors, my parents were like, Jody, just be a communications major. So, and then I married a very strong man and really didn't need to make any decisions. I know I sound like an airhead, but I really didn't have to make any decisions. All the decisions were already made in my life. I know that sounds so Stepford wife, and if you're not old enough to know what a Stepford wife is, just sort of like a robot wife. They just dressed pretty, and they had sex with their husbands, and they brought up the children, and they did whatever the men did. I digress. So at 35, I wanted to compete. At 35, I had the best physique I've ever had. I felt the strongest I ever had. I was lifting 5 days a week. My nutrition, people thought I was crazy. I've talked about this in other episodes. I was counting my macros. Nobody knew what a macro was. Nobody knew what protein, good fats, or carbohydrates were. But I did, and everybody thought I was crazy. So I get divorced, and I'm training at Bally's gym, and I meet this young girl who tells me that she's going to be competing. And she tells me about this woman up in Massachusetts, and she said she's about my age, and I should meet her because I've got a really good physique, and I would do really well. So I went up to finally meet this woman, Kathy Savage, and we hit it off, and she became my coach, and I finally hit the stage at about 47 years old because I was too scared and I wanted perfection, and she's just like, get your ass on stage. And I've talked about this on the podcast before, and this is when I can tell you that ready is a lie. We are never fully ready to do anything, and that's why it's important for us to trust our gut. I'm saying a lot in this, a lot of things I've said on the show, a lot of things you've heard me say, but it's worth repeating because I think it's really, really, really important wherever you are in life to follow your gut and to not wait until things are perfect, that you have all your ducks in a row. Because one day you're going to wake up and you're going to say now. And you're going to say now knowing that you're really not ready, but you're going to do it anyway, and you're going to do it scared. That's a big, big lesson. And I've talked to so many women in my life that have waited until they thought the time was right, the time to compete, the time to be in a relationship, the time to leave a relationship, the time to start a new job, start a new career, leave it, get a dog. I mean, every decision you can think of. But the thing stopping them is fear. And it's just not for women, it's for men too. I've seen scaredy cat men, but because I talk to mostly women and I coach only women, that I know this to be true. We are afraid to trust our gut. That's the fear. And many women feel that maybe they did trust their gut in the past, and that took them to an uncomfortable place or a place they didn't want to stay for very long, or they felt like it was a mistake. And mistakes really, really suck. And then they make us not trust our gut anymore. And then we get confused and then we stay stuck. Believe me, I have been there and I have coached women who have been there, and it's never about fitness. Sometimes it is, but it's rarely about fitness. It's about life. And that's the thing as a coach. You're rarely, yes, at the beginning, but once you have a relationship with your client, I'm really rarely coaching them on how to eat, how to exercise. It's more about how do we bring those things into an already maybe chaotic and stressful life, or we bring it into a life where your family's not supportive or your significant other is not supportive. And we find those obstacles and we fear losing that comfort we had with them when maybe we weren't exercising, when we weren't eating healthy, when we were enjoying, eating really yummy desserts and fattening desserts and drinking a lot of alcohol, until finally you start realizing, I don't want to feel like this anymore. And the reason I'm still doing it is because of this person or for this reason. And now I need to tell them that I don't want to do this anymore, or I want to pull back at it because it doesn't make me feel good anymore. And that's scary because we don't want to lose the people we care about. And I'm going to tell you this, that if that person cannot get on board with you, and I'm not saying immediately, because everybody needs some time when there's change. But if that person doesn't eventually show some compromise, shows an interest in what you're doing, and can support you in a way where you are benefiting, that it's not selfish of them, and you don't need to fear losing that intimacy with them, then that's a lovely relationship. But women fear telling their significant other, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing, and I need you on board with this. My point is that we fear a lot of things that aren't real, and we fear a lot of things that we project our feelings on, right? So a lot of the things that we fear, there's an AA thing, fear, the acronym for fear. Fear is really about projecting what we anticipate about something that will happen or something that someone will say. But you don't know until you step up to the plate and you have to trust your gut that this person cares enough about you, loves you enough to want to support you, because more than likely they just don't understand what their role is in your life now. And I allowed so many fears in my life to stop me. Why didn't I tell my parents, hey, listen, I really want to get tutors, and I know it's too late for me to become a physical therapist at this school, but let me see if I can get into some classes or become a nutritionist. Why didn't I tell my parents, hey, listen, I know I suck at math and science, but I'm going to work really, really hard, and I'll get a job so I can pay for the additional tuition, whatever it was. But I was like, okay, well, if my mom and dad say that I'm not smart enough to be a nutritionist, then I guess I'm just not smart enough. And here I am at almost 65 years old, still talking about, it was a story that I told myself because my parents would say to me, you're really pretty. Like they would tell me my whole life I was really pretty. and never said you're really smart, even though I was a solid B plus student and did fine in school. I did terrible on the SATs, but I did fine in school. I was the farthest thing from stupid. And they just didn't put a lot of emphasis on that. And so when I had my daughters, I made sure that, we didn't talk always about the way they looked. I mean, you can't ignore it, but it was about the things they did, the kindness, how smart they were, and working harder to improve yourself. So going back to 10 years of competing, not allowing my significant other from 2008 to 2014, and in 2009, I became a 2-time world bikini champion. I did not allow I'm going to just say it, his jealousy of what he thought I was trying to do it to get attention from other men. And if you know anything about the fitness world, you know that most of the bodybuilders are gay. And we fitness competitors want nothing to do with these men, not because they're gay, but because we're focusing on what we're doing. And there are no like love relationships. It just doesn't happen. It's just not a thing. And it was his own insecurities. And I was so proud of myself for not allowing his insecurities to stop me from doing something I felt so strongly about. It was like going back to my parents telling me that I shouldn't be a physical therapist or a nutritionist. I wasn't going to allow somebody and my ex-husband telling me, no, you can't compete. This was my new life and I needed to take charge of it. And if there was going to be a person in my life, and I had friends also who were going to be obstacles in the way of me doing something I finally wanted to fucking do, I was like, get the fuck out of my life. I don't need, at this age, I'm almost 50 years old, for somebody else to tell me I can't do it. Or the reason I want to do it is because you're too old. It's too expensive. Why would you want to do this? Nobody does this, right? Nobody does anything I've ever fucking done. Nobody was talking about fucking lifting weights or macros or anything when I was doing it, yet I still did it. And my ex-husband used to shut me the fuck up at dinner parties. If he came around and somebody was asking me what I did at the gym, he would elbow me. He would kick me under the table. He would shut me the fuck up. And I was like, no, this isn't going to happen again. I'm not going to be shut down again. And thank God I listened to my fucking gut and I did not let the fear of losing a relationship over something I wanted over another goddamn human being. I wasn't doing it. I didn't care. I didn't care that nobody was on the same page with me. That's how strongly I felt. And you could hear it in my voice. All of those things from our childhood to where we are as adults, they all lead us to these places. I feared upsetting my parents and disappointing them. I didn't want to rock the boat in my marriage, so I didn't push competing. So I did it. I went to the gym, obviously, when he was at work. I was a stay-at-home mom. I never worked out when he was around on the weekends. Never. I wasn't allowed. So I got my workouts done during the week, and he gave me a lot of shit about it, telling me that my muscles were big, that my legs were big, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, Jody, just keep doing it. Keep doing it. You feel good. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. I don't know where this is going to take you, Jody, but do not get off this path. Stay here, Jody. Stay here, Jody. Stay here, Jody. Trust your gut and stop fearing being yourself. And that is why being fearlessly authentic is so important to me. Because I've had to fight these people my whole life. And this is not a pity party for me, but when I talk about certain things, and it's probably the reason why I'm taking time in between podcast episodes, because I get so emotional about stuff that's happened in my life. And this not so quiet because I'm going through my divorce, but quiet time I'm going through in my life, being alone, being with Ava, having my daughter nearby, that is just giving me such friggin' strength and clarity. And then I'm so grateful to have this clarity Most people have it at 30 or 40 or 50. And I want you to know that if you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, and you're still confused about what path to follow, just do what feels right for you, as long as it's legal. You have to stop fearing what other people are going to say. You have to stop fearing who you might offend. If you're offending somebody, that means you triggered something in them, and it's not your goddamn problem. It's theirs. And that was really hard for me because I was a people pleaser. And I said this like on the very first episode, almost 6 years ago. I am a reformed people pleaser. I am a reformed scaredy cat because I was afraid of what people would say about me. And I still, look, I'm not always, fearless. I still, if I'm doing an Instagram reel or on TikTok, sometimes I think, I don't know if I should say this or I don't know if I should put this up. But you know what? 99% of the time I do. And I just say, fuck it. Just fuck it. Like, look at all the other crap that's out there. And I'm like, really, Jody? And you are fearing you are an authority in fitness. You are an authority in nutrition. You are an authority on living life. You're almost 65 years old. You have nothing to fear. What do you fear? Nothing. Making an ass out of myself? Sure. None of us want to look like fools. None of us want to say anything stupid. But you know what? Maybe it brings up a conversation about something else. So why did I hit the stage after 10 years? I'll tell you why. I competed for 10 years and I stopped at 55. And I stopped because of the reasons I told you at the beginning of the show. I felt like, okay, Jody, you've done everything. You've opened up Jody Fit. You did that at 50. You competed. You now had your second studio. You're opening up a third studio. You're a 2-time world bikini champion. Your children are growing up. They're in college or they're out of college, wherever they were at 54. They were graduating. And one was coming out. They were like both out of college by then. And I thought, it's time, Jody. It's time to do what you want to do. I thought, I can hang up my stripper heels. I don't need to do this anymore. For who? For what? I did it all. What else am I going to do? And then at 58, 4 years later, Lexi approaches me and says, you've got to try out for Sports Illustrated Swim. And then I made global news doing that because I was doing something that nobody else would do. It wasn't my idea. It was my daughter's idea. So they were on board with me, like being fearlessly authentic before Fearlessly Authentic came after Sports Illustrated Swim and all the press that I got from that for just being fearlessly authentic and making an impression and impact on women over 50 that we shouldn't be overlooked. We shouldn't be ignored. I was talking about menopause way back then when nobody was talking about it. Now everybody's talking about it, and that's great. But again, I was talking about menopause, and I was talking about not putting us in a box and not overlooking us as society does when women are over 55, because 99% of women over 55 are going through menopause or are postmenopause. So I didn't compete while I was married to him, my second husband. Like I said, I'm still going through my divorce. And I was fine with that. I was busy with my business. I had 2 studios. He was busy with work. And then in 2019, when I made global news with Sports Illustrated Swim, and then in February of 2020, I started this podcast. And then the whole world shut down and everything changed in the world, 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 and relationships changed. And my relationship with my husband then changed, and it was good for a little bit. And then it wasn't good. And then in 2022, my lease was up for my studio. And to be honest with you, the pandemic really made owning a studio really difficult. And anybody who was a gym owner back then knows what I'm talking about. And I think that this may sound like an excuse. I don't know. There was nothing in me that wanted to go online. There was nobody that I didn't want to go digital. The ladies in my studio wanted the studio. They didn't know what it would be like to work out with somebody online. That was not something any of us thought about. And I had a brick and mortar. I still had a place that I was paying rent for. And so as soon as we opened, of course, I tried keeping the ladies busy and gave them workouts while the studio was closed. But it never got back to where it really was before because everybody was getting COVID. I had young trainers with families and they would get sick and their husbands would get sick and their kids would get sick and their parents would get sick. Their babysitters would get sick. And there was somewhat of a divide at the studio. And some people worked out with me and made me wear a mask. Others didn't. It was a very, very, very trying time. And by the time my lease was up, I was fucking done. And I want to tell you that during this whole time, did I ever think about competing again? No, not really. I had 2 women on my show who competed in the NPC. One of them I'm very friendly with now still. Haven't met her in person. Hopefully one day soon we will meet. And I remember thinking, oh, I kind of want to do that again. Mentioned it to my then husband, the man I'm still married to now. And he was like, oh, don't do it. And I thought, yeah, he's right. I did it. I had my heyday. Like, you're good, Jody. You're good. You're always going to be a 2-time world bikini champion. And you're always going to be, a person who made global news with Sports Illustrated Swim. And you're always going to be an award-winning studio. And maybe it's just time to relax. So when my lease was up, I was like, thank God. Let me move on with my life. And he was on board. He was thrilled. He was actually thrilled that I wasn't rushing to work every day, that I was going to be calm, that I wasn't going to be stressed out about the studio and clients and I was teaching a lot of classes. I was doing a lot of the stuff myself. And actually the last 6 months in the studio, I got rid of group classes altogether because somebody was always sick. The group members were sick. It wasn't making me any money anymore. And it was more of a pain in the ass. And my clients made more progress training with me one-on-one than they did in a group fitness class, which is why I don't like group fitness, but I did offer it in this studio, my last studio, because I knew this was something that women wanted. And it was the women who didn't want to spend the money for one-on-one training. If I were to open up a studio tomorrow, I would never, ever, 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 ever offer group fitness. The world has changed. I would never. I am a one-on-one kind of girl. My clients will tell you that. So during all this time, did I ever think about competing again? No. But I will say that when I was married to my first ex-husband, I didn't compete because he didn't want me to. In my second relationship, I continued to compete because that's how important it was to me. I wasn't going to let anybody get in the way of my dreams. And then I still continued to compete, but not as often. And then the last show was when I was 55, and I knew he didn't want me to do it anymore. I don't know if the man I'm still married to didn't want me to compete because it took attention away from him. I don't think so at all. I think he wanted a very calm life. And when I was competing, everything was very particular. And this is what I'll say. He very much, for most of our marriage, liked me when I was demure. He actually used that word before it was a popular word. And he would say, I like, spicy Jody. He didn't use that word. I can't think of feisty Jody, but I also like demure Jody. And when I thought about that, I thought, oh, I'm finally with a man who allows me to be in my feminine energy. And again, I don't need to compete. Like, for what? Like, I'm good. I'm good. So I never really thought, I didn't blame him for it. I was good with not competing. I was really okay with it. And then we separate. I file for divorce, and I'm working out at this small gym, and I'm thinking, I could do more than this. I want to get back that strength. And it's almost like the reinvention of me again. It was like I was in my 40s again and saying, I don't know who this next Jody's going to be. And I'm really excited to see who I'm going to find. Who is she going to be this time? So for a while, the Jody from 55 to 65, for the most part, was I was a businesswoman. I was running 2 studios. I was a wife. But towards the end of the marriage, I started feeling like I was losing myself a little bit. And maybe I was losing myself a little bit because I didn't have the studio anymore either. But there were a lot of different factors that I've sort of shared on this podcast before, and I don't want to talk about it anymore because, as I've also said, he is a good man and it just didn't work out. And those are things I just not going to talk about. You know, you get to a point in your life when you go through a breakup where you're angry, you're mad, you're pissed, you want to say shitty things about the person, and then the calm comes and you're like, you know, I married him. He was a good guy. He tried his hardest. And I'm sad it didn't work out, you know? So 10 years of competing, 10 years off, what made me get on stage? This took me a very long time to get here today on this episode. Why did I compete after not competing for 10 years? And it simply is, I wanted to discover who Jody was again. And it always takes me back to the strength of my mind and the strength of my body. And combining that strength, that pushing, that pulling that you do at the gym, that masculine part of lifting weights, right? That's our masculine side. To the feminine energy of walking on stage in a beautiful bikini with a beautiful tan and pretty hair and makeup, high heels, and being our most feminine self, presenting such a feminine, strong energy. And I needed to feel that. I needed to know that I could become that person again because I thought she was gone. I thought I lost her in my 50s. And I found out, and I really didn't have any desire to, but as I started going to the gym more at this new gym and just being around a different energy of human beings. By the way, I don't talk to anybody at the gym. I go there and I do my thing. So it was just being more social, even though I wasn't talking to anybody. But it was the energy versus the energy at this other gym, this small boutique gym. It was the energy. It was this just powerful energy. And I'm like, yeah, I need to feel that again. I need to feel that I am that strong, vibrant, beautiful, muscular woman again. And that is why I stepped on stage and I felt so graceful and so feminine, yet so goddamn strong. Like, shit, Jody. How did you get this strong? And I want to tell you, ladies, the strength that shows up in your body starts with the strength in your head. Because the only way you're going to be able to lift that weight is if you have the mindset of being a powerful woman and seeing that image of you that you might lust after. Again, I didn't know how I was going to show up on stage. I didn't know. I tried to imagine myself walking on stage, but because it had been so long, because it was a different federation, I didn't know how I was going to show up. And I was so calm, not like 10 years ago. I was frenetic. I was hectic. I was chaotic. I was nervous. I was anxious, excited always. This time, just calmness. And it showed me, wow, Jody, you've really lived a lot of life in the last 10 years. I had my daughters there, my sister there, my future son-in-law and his parents, and my coach. And there was a calmness, sort of like the way I feel in my life right now, a calmness that I had never felt. I trained harder than I ever have in my life. I lifted heavier than I ever lifted in my entire life. I was the oldest person in that show. I didn't care. And I placed second in 50 and over. I still look at the video and I see myself after they introduced me walking on stage. And honestly, I wasn't even nervous. Like when you start, there's like 3 or 4 stairs to step up onto the stage. And I was number 49. So it was like, I think 47 in front of me, 49. The girl behind me was 50. I remember she walks on stage. Then they have us walking on stage. The next person just standing there while they're doing their thing. And so you're already on. And so when they tell you to start walking up the stairs, you're like, oh shit, I'm really going on. But it was like that for a second. And then they called my name and I'm like, okay, I'm doing this. I meant to hear my daughters in the audience. It was just a different experience. And I really surprised myself at how calm I was, how poised, how I floated, how I look at the videos and I'm like, wow, not my physique. It's just how calm I've become. And I became calm because I chose to be calm. I chose to walk away from chaos and loneliness and anxiety for peace, for solitude, for contentment, for the love for myself. So whatever it is that you are contemplating, a goal, a change of a job, change in a relationship, moving to another state, moving to another country, the fear that you may feel might just be you getting excited about something happening because you don't know what's on the other side of fear until you take that big leap. And I'm just going to leave you with that. It's a big leap of faith. And I promise you, your life will change when you do that. It might get a little mucky. It might feel really uncomfortable, but everything is waiting for you on the other side of fear so you can go and live that fearlessly authentic life. Thank you guys for listening. I know this was a very long episode and I really appreciate you listening. I will try to come back here with more episodes coming out more often. Understand that I'm just going through a process right now and just be patient. I want to only help you become the best version of yourself that you are willing to work hard for, because nobody else can do the work to change your life the way you want it to be changed. It's up to you. Nothing changes until something changes. Bye for now and go live your most fearlessly authentic life. I'll see you next time.